All right. Good afternoon, good morning to all of you guys. We're going to get started with the webinar. Today we're going to talk about how do we align the L&D efforts with your business goal. Recently, I saw this news that Bosch has announced about 2 billion euros into reskilling workers. So talk about not having a L&D budget, and there is Bosch, which is heavily investing in transforming their people. And I'm going to talk about some of the famous quotes here and kind of bring a story together. That as Einstein said, if you do the same thing over and over again and expect a different result, um, that's insanity, right? And second thing is, as Darwin said, it's not the strongest of the paces which survives, not even the most intelligent one, but the one who are most adaptable to change. And this is true in a business as well, right? So there are market trends which drives your business strategy. So in case of Bosch, there's a huge disruption happening in the auto industry after almost 100 years. This is the first time there's a major disruption because of electrical technology. And this market trend is going to drive Bosch's strategy at the CXO level. And this strategy would require, like as Einstein was saying, if you want to get different results, you need to do things differently. So you need to transform your people, you need to transform your organization to be able to see the business growth. So the point I'm trying to make is that if you're looking for transformation, you got to do things differently. And who are the ones who are going to do things differently are your people. Your people are the one who are going to build the products. They are going to make the strategy. They are going to do the production. They are going to manage, even though you have robots, the whole factory is managed by people. So unless your people change, this chain of events does not happen, right? So people transformation is a key to any transformation. And what ends up usually happening is there is a strategy and there's execution. There's a huge chasm, and most of the companies who do okay or not so well or below average, or because this gap is very hard to breach sometimes. Yeah. So there's a gap between the strategy and the actual execution. Basically, if you look at the organization, right, which any kind of initiative, business initiative needs some transformation in your organization. And organization and people are essentially two sides of the same coin. When you change people, your organization changes. And when you change your organization, you're essentially changing your people. And that's why any kind of transformation is literally a people transformation. And I hear all the time from CEOs and even the L&D folks that it's hard to create change. And change, we've been trying this for many years, or people are not changing, they're not adapting. Well, the fact is, we as employees, as managers, as L&D folks, we change every day. In fact, I'll say every second. The change is constant. So your employees are changing, your sales team is changing, your market is changing, your customers are changing, everybody's changing. The question is it the change you have designed, or is it happening naturally? So change is not the problem. Change happens. The question is, how do you drive the change? How do you design the change? How do you create that chain of transformation? That's really the question. It's not about the change. It's about what kind of change. So my story a little bit. My name is Sachin Chaudhary. I go by Saj. So I studied engineering at University of Cincinnati, then worked in Silicon Valley for a couple of years as engineering manager. Then did a bunch of management roles at EMC. Went back to school at Harvard Business School, and then afterwards I started Paradiso. And the way it started, the whole story, like a lot of people ask me, like, why you got into L&D? Well, I have been on both sides of the aisles, on both sides of the the fence. I've been on the executive side, on the employee side, which was consuming the L&D content, which was going through a lot of training in Silicon Valley and many other places in US where I worked. And then when I switched the roles, I was also on the other side as a L&D executive, trying to talk to executives, the CXO level. So I realized the CXO thinks something else what L&D does. They think it of as a cost center, as a checkbox. And the L&D thinks CXOs do not understand the power of transformation. So each one is saying to each other that you just don't get it. And this was kind of the trigger for me to start looking deeply into this field and see, is there an opportunity here to be able to transform, to be able to create a new innovations in the L&D field. And that's how the story started many years ago. And that's the birth of Paradiso. So currently Paradiso is a corporate training. We have products as well as services. Our flagship product is a Paradiso LMS, which is used by hundreds of customers in 30 different countries. We released LXP recently. We have a course catalog of about 80,000 plus courses. We do consulting, strategy consulting. We also do custom course creation. And the framework we're going to talk today is called TAP. And that's our latest consulting offering, which is bundled with our product. Right. So we operate mostly in US. Also recently, a couple of years ago, we started expanding in India, and we have presence in South America and Colombia. So going back to our topic here, and these are some of our clients: Flipkart, Amway, India, Central Bank of Kuwait, USIC in the Midwest in US, Thirdware, Johnson Control, British Tobacco, so on and so forth. So let's go back to our topic, the webinar topic. So what are the top challenges of CXO, right? So the topic of today is, how do you align L&D with your business goals? So to understand business goals, we need to understand our CXOs, our CEOs, our CFOs, our CTOs, CIOs, CMOs, and obviously the head of sales. Like, what are their challenges? So essentially, if you go back to the first principles, you find out that any CXO ultimately is dealing with one or two or all three of these, right? They're trying to grow the revenue. If you let's take an example of CEOs. That's the best way you can understand your business. It's what is the CEO worries about? What is he trying to build? He's either trying to grow revenue, lowering the cost if the margins are going down, and lower the compliance risk or risk of going out of business because competitor took you over, right? So essentially these three are the main challenges of CXO, and everything he or she does is essentially ties into one or all three of these. And what are some of the solutions the CXO comes up with, right? So to be able to increase the revenue, you got to be able to differentiate the market with a better product or lower cost, or better service, whatever that is. That could be one of the initiatives. Or to lower the cost, you got to increase your productivity, or to reduce the risk that somebody else will take over your business. So all the taxi companies which are wiped out with Ola and Uber, they didn't have the moat, right? They didn't have the innovation. So for you to be able to sustain in the market as a CEO, you need to innovate. And also, if you're in healthcare or let's say airline, you got to be careful about compliances, that you don't do something illegal or non-compliant and your business gets bankrupt. So these are some of the ways the CEOs deals with the top three challenges which organization faces, right? So before I address how we're going to go through these challenges and tie it into L&D, let's do a quick poll. So if you will, we have just released a poll on your screen. Let's see if I can add that poll. Share now. I believe you are able to see the poll on your right hand side of your screen. And basically, we are looking into what are the challenges you as a L&D leader or you as a CXO. I see a lot of CEOs have joined the call. As a CEO is facing currently, and pretty soon we're going to get the results literally in 10-20 seconds. So let's hang in. So everybody on the call gets a chance to give the answer to the poll. The poll is about a what challenges what L&D you as a L&D person are dealing in your organization. So shortage of budget, L&D strategy, engagement, effectiveness, and C-suite doesn't understand the value, right? So we're seeing the answers pretty evenly spread out in the top four options, and the winner is the lack of engagement in training. That seems to be the most popular answer here right now. So there you go. So most of the companies are facing this challenge, and followed by not having a clear L&D strategy, and training does not demonstrate the effectiveness. So these are two. There's a tie. So let's move on. And I can guarantee you that some of these challenges you're seeing throughout these 30-40 minutes we have left, you will get at least few ideas to address the challenges regarding the strategy, the effectiveness, or the how to convince the CXOs to get you more budget. So moving on. So the question really is, we understand now, if you as a CEO, if you want to address any of those three challenges, you got to change something. If you don't change, you stay the same. So the CXO wants the transformation. The question is, how can you as L&D play a key role in accelerating this transformation? The change is going to happen. The transformation is going to happen with or without you. The question is, the real role, as I see for L&D, is to be able to accelerate this transformation, so your organization can reach the goal faster. And that's where the L&D innovation and L&D role comes into play. And to address this, we looked at some of the methodology currently used today to create the strategy which is aligned with your business goals. And we found there's a gap. There's a gap in how L&D designs its program. There's a gap in how L&D delivers the program. And we created this framework called Transformation Acceleration Framework. We call it, goes by TAP. So we're going to deal a little bit into that. And if you want more information about this framework, a white paper we have released, send us an email. You'll get the contact information later on, but it's essentially info@paradisosolutions.com, and you'll know a lot more about it. But let's look into what is the TAP framework. So the TAP framework, one aspect of the TAP framework is this 9-step process. So essentially, in next 35 minutes or so, I'm going to walk you through these 9 steps, which will help you align your initiatives as L&D with your business goals. And also I'll tell you practical ways how you can actually get started. So there are 3 aspects to it, to the framework. There's a mindset aspect. And when I say mindset, I'm talking about the L&D. So going forward, everything we're going to talk about is L&D, not the CXOs. So the mindset, then there's a strategy aspect, like how do you design an L&D strategy? As we saw in the poll, that having a clear strategy is one of the challenges many of you are facing. About 33% of you said that strategy is one of the challenge. We're going to talk about how do you design the strategy. I'll give you some framework. I'll give you models. I'll give you templates, which you can download and take it from us and use it. And last thing, once you design the strategy, how do you deliver on what you're promising to your CXO? And so let's get started with the mindset, right? So as we all know, everything precedes the mindset, right? Your behavior, your strategy. You got to have the right mindset as a L&D, and you got to change your mindset to be able to see the change in your organization as a learning and development organization. So until now, L&D has been looked at as learning and development. The role was more about doing some trainings here and there, filling the gaps. But we got to change that mindset. You know, the faster the change is happening in the world, the rate of change is accelerating, whether it's because of AI, internet, Industry 4.0, or direct to consumer whatever those changes are, the changes in the world, the market trends are accelerating. That means your transformation needs to accelerate. That means your people need to change faster. So L&D essentially, if I have to give you a new role, it has to be L&T. It's a learning and transformation, right? We're not here to give information. We're to transform people, and that's what we get paid for. Employees are taking training not because they want to learn more things, but essentially the CXO is putting out the budget because you want to see the way they're thinking, they're doing the business, the way they're selling, the way they're designing the products. You want to see the transformation. You want to see a real behavior change, attitude change, skill level change. So as I said, the first aspect for this framework to work is having this new mindset of being an agent of transformation, right? And one of the challenges we have as L&D is there is a certain way employees as well as your CXO at the top as well as the bottom, the actual employees who take the training, or the middle, they all has different impression of L&D. It's mostly outdated. It's mostly focused on compliance training, and it kind of equates to boring, inefficient, kind of a corner office kind of department in most of the companies. Bosch being exception, right? There are a few companies in the world who really focuses on training and willing to invest 2 billion euros in reskilling employees, meaning literally in the L&D efforts. But most of the companies, for us to be able to go out there and get this kind of job of L&T, of agent of transformation, we got to rethink, redesign L&D departments. L&D people needs to think of themselves as a new startup within your company. So startup has a new vision, new mission. It uses a lot of design thinking, the preconceived notion of how the manager training should conduct, how should your sales training should conduct. All of that is open for conversation. It's open to rethink. So design thinking is the main principle. And also it needs a new brand. We need to change our reputation from being boring department to agent of transformation. And this branding, essentially it's both. The CXO, the way they look at L&D as a cost center, as a checkbox. So there's a branding problem there from top down. Also from bottom up, your employees, your managers look at L&D not as something which can help them in transformation. They think of L&D as somebody to send email if the compliance training is not being done right. If the infosec or healthcare compliance or whatever other compliance training your employees are not performing, you send an email to L&D. And that's the brand we have as L&D folks. And we got to rethink and really make over, create a new brand, a much cooler, much sexier, much more appealing brand for L&D. And that can be only done when L&D leaders start having this new mindset, which this framework is talking about. And this is essential for everything else to work. So next thing is, so what do we do? So to be able to get a seat on the C-suite table, to be able to sit on your annual board meetings where you're talking about the transformation of your organization, if you want a seat there, you got to position yourself as somebody who will help the CXOs to transform and accelerate that transformation. So the new role is a transformation acceleration officer or transformation agent or chief transformation officer, whatever suits you. But that's the new mindset. And that's essential for us to be able to get to the next stage. So the next stage is in our 9-step formula is think about a strategy. How do we design an L&D strategy which is aligned with business goals? So essentially, we created this model of there is a market trend going on, whether it's electrical vehicle or whatnot, and that essentially needs some kind of transformation in your company, right? So let's take an example of a Bosch, right? So for them, their initiative is to either create new products or upgrade existing product to suit the electrical technology. So these are initiatives at the C level, right, which are driven by the market trends. And every company goes through this annual planning meeting, right, at the CXO level. And then each of these initiatives have impact on all different departments. The initiative is big enough, and obviously there has to be a big initiative if you want to sustain in the market and grow. You cannot be the same thing and expect different results. So literally means every department is going to change in your organization. Every department needs to transform. Whether it will transform or not is another story, but it needs to be able to get the strategy into execution. I just have two examples here for sales and marketing, but essentially you can have HR, finance, every single department listed out here. And essentially a department consists of people. And people can be transformed using three methods. Either we need to change their skills, change their knowledge, or change their attitude. Skills, knowledge, and attitude. And for let's take an example of a Bosch here. I'll draw it down. So let's say the one of the auto companies, they decided to go through this electrical vehicle trend, and they have two different initiatives. One consists of creating new products, so maybe creating cars which are electrical, and also modify existing products. So let's take an example of Ford, for example, right? So they may be creating brand new electrical vehicle and also modifying the current vehicles also. So for creating brand new vehicle, their sales needs to start to change to be able to sell these new products. So skills, knowledge, and attitude. And we realize that to sell new product, the skills and attitude is pretty much same. Let's assume that's the conclusion there L&D has. The knowledge about electrical technology needs to be given. So you see how we went from the market trend, the initiatives, all the way to the learning objectives using this model, right? So that's part of the strategy. Now the question is, how you as a L&D folk who don't have a seat on the board, who don't have a seat on the C-suite table, who don't talk to CEOs every day, let's say you're a big enough company, how do you get these kind of insights to be able to figure out this strategy and fill this map, if you will? This mapping essentially maps your L&D efforts, which are going to be here, to your initiatives, your business. How do you do that? Well, the first step in that process is research, right? So one of the things, right, if you want to sell your idea to your CXOs or sell anything, focus on understanding your customer. In this case, your company, your organization is your customer. Your CXO, your CEO is a customer who is going to allocate your budget. So understanding their life, they feeling understood is the first step. And a lot of the companies, L&D folks and HR folk mixes this. And that's when we do consulting and when we are talking to C-level executives, we realize that they're talking a different language, and the L&D and HR are talking different language. And pretty soon what happens is that the CXOs stop giving attention to L&D because they realize that what they have to do, they have to figure out themselves. They have to figure out how to get the transformation done, right? But the idea is if you can team up, if the CXO can team up with the agent of transformation, imagine the kind of acceleration, imagine the kind of impact you as a L&D folk can have, and imagine the impact it's going to have for the CXO who can dream big, who can achieve big, because he has somebody in the company who can accelerate the transformation. He doesn't have to wait for many more years or be afraid of making a bold moves. So to be able to so one step in the research is to understand the CXO's mindset, right? To understand, be in their shoes, walk in their shoes, to be able to understand that where are the market trends, where is the initiatives. Like earlier we talked about the three things, right? Either increase revenue, lower cost, or reduce the risk of a business. So understanding that you're not going to get the time of the day from the CEO every day to be able to coach you into that. You have to take it on yourself. You need to figure out, and some of the tools I'm going to give you in this short webinar will help. And also later on, if we continue the conversation, there will be additional tools I can send you. But the idea is the mindset, right? The L&D understanding that for me to do my job, it's not okay to be just a professor. It's not okay to just to be a trainer. It's not okay to just look at the budget and allocate it. For me to do my job as an agent of transformation, it's my duty to be able to understand what's going on in my CEO's head, to understand what is the board is deciding, what are the market trends, what is the business initiative, where the strategy is going. right? So that's the point I'm trying to make here. So I'll give you some examples here, right? So you're seeing the trends, market trends and changes every day yourself. You see how the whole landline industry wiped out literally in 5 to 10 years, and now mobile industry is wiping out with WhatsApp and other things. Financial industry, we're using a lot more of PayPal and Paytms, Google Pay and whatnot. So the entire financial companies, the banks, the credit card companies, they are struggling. They're figuring out how are we going to transform fast enough. Not transforming is not enough. You got to accelerate your transformation, right? If you look at the retail, right, during the COVID, all the retail was shut down, but people were still eating. They were still buying clothes online. So the entire e-commerce thing, how do you become omni-channel, right? You have a store, you still have online presence, you have a delivery boys, um, all those things, the transformation, the changes happening, how do you get those done in your organization? So this is what your CXO is thinking, depending on which industry you are in. And as I'll go back to that slide again, because it's essential for you to get this, to be able to get this framework. So this is where the initiatives, this market trends here, sorry, this is the growth, the market trend part, which is driving the initiatives, right? You pick your industry, you will find trends, and this is going to help you to be in the shoe of your CEO, like understanding his life, understanding where the company is going. um, and by understanding these trends on an industry level, you can understand the trends in your company level. So there are micro and macro trends happening in the world. So COVID was a macro trend, right? And within your industry, let's say you're a credit card company, there may be a micro trend happening about reducing the transaction fees. These external trends, which have nothing to do with your organization, whether you work for Bajaj or Reliance or Air Canada, these are happening independent of whether your company exists or not. The world is changing, right? And then there are internal changes which are happening within your company. Maybe your company, like recently Tata bought Air India, so that's an internal change, acquisition. Or your company decided to build new products. So there are external and internal trend, and for you as a L&D folk, it's extremely essential to be able to understand this business language, to be able to understand the trends, because these trends are going to give you clues about what strategy your CEO is thinking, and that will help you understand why they are doing what they're doing, what CFO is doing, what CMO is doing, what CXOs are doing, why there are business initiatives, and how can you align yourself so you are in the flow and not going against the flow. You're accelerating the transformation and not just being a watcher. You're not an audience. You're not a trainer, but agent of transformation. So this is why I'm emphasizing so much on this point, that you got to understand these trends and the business. And then the next step for you, once you understand what initiatives your company is taking, let's say they decided to build a new electrical vehicle, then you look at your company, your employees who need to transform themselves. So you go by the department and you start doing gap analysis. Okay, this is where my CEO wants the company to take, the organization to go there. What do my people need to know? And for my people to know what they need to know, what do they know now? Where is that gap? Is it here, here? And of course, the gap is different for every department and every person in the department. So there are two primary ways you can do a formal gap analysis, like interview. So when I say all levels, you literally start to get started from your CXO team, if they can give you the time of the day, and they will give you the time of the day. When you start a business language, when you're able to use some of these frameworks I'm mentioning, when they understand you're going to actually help them get the goal faster, which basically gets their bonus faster, their stock price higher. When they understand you're on their team, they will give you the time of the day, and that's your lead into getting the budget, right? So interview the top people. So if the CXO doesn't have time, all the head of the departments, the GMs, understand where the gaps are. Once you understand the initiatives, right? And there could be formal written assessment you can do. There's many ways to do formal assessment, right? You can do a sampling, right? Let's say you have a 200 people sales team and you want to understand how much they know about, let's say, online payments or e-commerce. Let's say you are a retail shop, how much your marketing team understands that. You don't have to do an assessment of all 200 people. Just take a sample of that, and you'll be able to get some idea of where the gaps are. And then there is an informal kind of gap analysis, where one of the key things we teach the CLOs, the chief learning officers, to understand is understand the customer journey of your business. Like, what does, from getting awareness of your company to delivering the product, what happens in between, and where are the struggles, where are the gaps. So let's take an example of automobile company again. Let's say the brand which your company has kind of lower reputation about customer service. So understanding the current customer journey will help you understand where the gaps are. And essentially, if you fix those gaps, you're helping your customer. If you're helping your customer, you're actually helping grow your business. And this is the language the CEO wants to hear. The more insights you have, the more time you're going to get with the CEO, because he understands that you understand him, right? So going next, this is an example of a digital gap analysis, right? So 36% of manufacturing companies, when this survey was done, the executives are saying, the 36% are saying there are insufficient internal skills. This word insufficient essentially is the skill gap, right? So this is just an example of a digital skill gap. And if you don't write the technology, you're going to be outdated, right? Every industry you can go after, from healthcare to airline. If your people are not digitally savvy, whether they are workers all the way to CEO, you're going to get wiped out in a few years. So these are the gaps. Essentially, if you don't fill, you cannot accelerate the transformation of your company. So this is one example of understanding the industry, the standards out there, what people are saying, understanding the gap. Okay, let's say you understand the gap. Then while doing that, don't forget external training. A lot of the CLOs we talk to, they focus on internal training. All the, one of the construction company, they were training all their project managers across all 20 different countries they had construction sites on. But then they realized that the problem wasn't the project manager who worked with them. The problem was their subcontractors who were building the bridges, who were supplying them the concrete mix or whatnot. So many companies forget the external training. And so don't forget training your customers, training your partners, your distributors, your suppliers. So that has to be part of your gap analysis, that what do my customers, my suppliers needs to know. For example, Flipkart uses our platform to train all the vendors who upload the products on their e-commerce shop, because they realize earlier on, if they want to grow at the scale they want to grow and compete with Amazon, they got to get on board the distributor or the sellers fast enough. And you cannot do that if you have a one training session every month. They want to give that freedom, the online freedom. So they use our multi-tenant extended enterprise LMS to be able to create external training. So don't forget in your gap analysis, what do you need to train your customers, your partners, your suppliers, right? So again, going back to the electrical vehicle example, so you have all these dealers, right, in every city in India or around the world, and you release this new product. The dealer needs to know how to sell the electrical vehicle, and if that doesn't happen, everything else kind of fails flat on the face. So remember to take care of the external training as well. Oh, by the way, if you have questions, and I'm sure there will be questions flowing in, there's a chat on the right. Feel free to put your question. We will not have time to go through each and every question, but whatever time we get in the end, we'll address those questions. So feel free to put your questions down there. And if the questions is long enough and you want to have a conversation with our team, feel free to send an email, because I realize I'm going very fast and I'm going to go faster now as we approaching the hour here. So, and then based on this research, the gap, you make a plan for the L&D, learning and transformation, your L&D department, your L&T department, you make the plan. Now, then plan is as good as, if you get the budget. If you don't get the budget, it's useless, right? So understand, like, what's the urgent and important thing on your CXO's agenda. out of all those initiatives which they are taking, understand that, address that using this kind of model in a graphical way, that you want to release this product, this is the core, so this is the learning objectives which is going to help. And here where you have departments, you can put your customers, your distributors, dealers, whatever you want to put, and make this a visual diagram which either within 5 minutes your CXO will understand how you're helping him accelerate the transformation. That's why we call the platform transformation acceleration platform, right? So you got to get the budget, and if you do the things right, the way explained, and if you have a good brand, if they can trust you on your delivery, they will, once I explain you how to deliver a better product, a better training, you should be able to get the budget. So that's the proposal part. Now let's say you got the budget, right? So now you got to deliver on what you're promising. You're promising a lot of things here. So again, going back to the Einstein's quote, if you want different results, you got to do things differently. So the delivery of the training is one of the biggest challenge, one of the biggest problems in L&D, right? There hasn't been much innovation in last 20 years, whether it's face-to-face, online, or hybrid. That's exactly what we did in year 2000, and we're doing that in 2021. And that's where we had a lot of our focus. And if you look at our poll today, a lot of the L&D folks were saying that the training is not effective. The employees are not engaged in the training. If you got this kind of budget, like Bosch got 2 billion euros of budget in L&T, if you get that kind of budget, you better fix your delivery. If not, a lot of the wastage will happen in your not only the time of your employees, but also the opportunity cost for your CXO. So let's look at what we can do about the delivery. Okay, I'm going to get some water here. So we understand, all of you have seen this forgetting curve, right? Within 7 days of this workshop, this webinar, you're going to forget 90%. Unbelievable. 90%, even if you put all your attention on this webinar, whatever I'm telling you, you're going to forget 90% of everything you're learning, unless you're able to reinforce it with your with repetition. There's a typing mistake here, but these are first revision, second revision, third and fourth, and it has to be spaced 1 day, 3 days, 7 days, 30 days, 90 days, so on and so forth. We know that, right? But even while knowing that, we still have workshops, sales training, which is 3 day long. We have managers training 1 day long. So obviously that's not going to work, because 1 day or whatever dump they got about the learning, within 7 days, they're going to forget 90%. So literally we are throwing the money down the garbage, right? With the current way of delivering the product, the current way of delivering the training. And that's where I'm having some challenges here. That's where the TAP framework comes in, right? We have invented a new delivery model, right? We call it TAP. It guarantees you, and I'll explain you exactly how it's done with the practical examples. Personalized delivery, right? Because one sales manager may be having challenges with delivering the knowledge to his sales team, but another manager or sales manager may be struggling with motivating their team. So you cannot have the same training for both the sales manager. It's not going to stick, because it's not hurting, right? If your stomach is not hurting, you're not going to go to doctor, right? So it's not going to stick. And that's exactly what happens, right? One size fit all. That's what we're doing. We got to get it personalized. Second thing is micro. You just saw the forgetting curve, right? If you have any information which you're just stuffing down in an hour, in 2, in 4, in 3 day workshops, in ops and meeting, that's all going to be wasted. You got to deliver small doses. You got to do the do, learn loop. You got to learn some small concept, do something about it, learn another concept, do something about it. So it has to be a daily, weekly thing, and it has to be a continuous thing, right? So the training cannot stop with your 3-day workshops for 6 months and nothing in between for your sales manager or manager. It has to be a weekly thing. It has to be, it's a process. It's not an event daily, you know. And all of this, the core of all of this is creativity. We live in a TikTok world. We live in a YouTube world. Your boring content, which is not relevant, which is huge, which is overdose, it's not focused on application, is not going to work. You got to get something which you can apply right away. You got to get something which is digestible, so I can go back to selling. I can go back to designing my products. I don't have time to sit for an 8-hour training, right? It got to be micro. It got to be engaging. It got to be interesting. It got to be continuous. So in each of these 4 aspects of TAP, one thing is clear: you got to have the creativity. So that's why I started. The main thing for this framework to work is the mindset of L&D people. If that doesn't change, if you don't consider yourself expert in design thinking, if you don't learn design thinking, you don't become creative, you don't rebrand your team, and people respecting your courses again, a lot of this is not going to work. And the essential thing, the super skill for next 10 years is not AI or machine learning. It's creativity. It's the soft skills, right? Because everything else will be taken care of the machine and Google. You don't need to know any formulas anymore. You need to know how to apply this formula, how to think creatively. And so this delivery model, let's go through that. Here is our traditional distribution or delivery of training, right? Information overload. I just told you, 4 hour, 8 hours is a lot. In the TAP model, is micro, literally 5 minutes, 7 minutes, 2 minutes, 8 minutes. In traditional model, it's an event. Oh, let's sign up for a training course on design thinking for 8 hours. It's an event, it's forgotten. Here, how do we apply design thinking principle every week? Small pieces. It's a process. It's a trainer focused. For a trainer, if you're training, let's say 500 project managers in your construction company, it's very convenient for a trainer to invite 50 project managers in Mumbai or in Amsterdam and do the training and finish it off in 1 month. Done. It's very trainer focused. It's very convenient, but it's not a learner focus. That's exactly the wrong thing to do for learners. Your learners are going to drown. Your learners are going to drown in the information overload. They're going to forget 90% within a week. Yeah. One size fits all. We talked about it. It personalized. Action is hoped that you took all these agile thinking, project management course, you took the design thinking course. We're hoping when you go back and 2, 3, 4 months from now, when our CEO talks about transformation, we are hoping that you'll remember this concept which we overdosed you, and we're hoping action will happen. And in TAP, action is guaranteed. In fact, the training doesn't move forward until there's a micro action, right? It doesn't work, it works. And I'll show you the proof, some data, how the TAP works. So the last year or so, we've been running experiments on both these platforms, traditional and TAP. So one company, the manager training is the most essential training in any organization. Managers are the skeleton, the backbone of the company. You transform managers, your productivity, your innovation already goes up a lot, right? So 5% of the employees said their manager has transformed after 3 months, right? They took 3-day manager training. In our case, they took micro training using our platform or any other platform you build on TAP framework. You can build your own platform. It was 2 months long, every week, about 15 minutes. So essentially, the total time invested by the manager was same. It just was spread out. 88% of employees said their manager has changed. So we didn't ask the manager for the feedback. We didn't ask the CXO for the feedback. We asked the people who work under that manager. Is your manager more empathetic? Does your manager try to understand and support you? Do you feel motivated by your manager, right? Is the conflicts in your team going down? These are the questions we ask the employees who went through the TAP management training, the managers. That's what we found. There's a lot more learner engagement. 95% of the learners tried at least 2 new ideas. So, the design thinking workshop we did, there were about 10 different ideas, but not everybody tried everything, but at least they tried 2. And only 9% of the learners tried two ideas when we interviewed them after 3 months. So did the training stick? Was it useful? Well, the way you know something is useful, if somebody's behavior is changing, information is useless, right? Unless you do behave differently, you think differently, you do something differently, you write an email differently to your customer, you design your products differently, organization has no use of your information as an employee, right? So these people, 95% of the learners were able to take at least two ideas and apply it on their daily work when we interviewed after 3 months, not right after the workshop, right? Sales training, the year on year growth of one team. So we had two teams, and one team grew their sales by 20%, another 45%, right? So we're kind of running out of time, so I'm going to rush through kind of quickly. So this is the platform where we're designing different scenarios, personalized training. So one of the aspect of the tap is make it personalized. Micro, right? TikTok size videos, the overdose. This is one example of a micro training. This is one of the nudge you will get through our platform in WhatsApp or in Teams or Slack or email. Um, and it's a micro nudge, micro training, and there is a small task which takes you about 3 to 5 minutes to complete. But the idea is you use the creativity, you use the engagement, and you get into their flow of work. You do this loop, do learn, do learn, do learn, this constant loop. Like Benjamin Franklin said, tell me, I'll forget. Teach me, I may remember. Involve me, I will learn, right? So how can we create a delivery system which will enable our learners to do daily application or weekly application of the concept, the micro concept we're teaching them? So always think micro, think inaugurated, right? So if your onboarding is 3 day long, full time, that's 24 hours. Split those 24 hours into 8 weeks. Onboarding does not have to be in the first 3 days of somebody joining the company. I know the word onboarding says that, but I'll tell you, if you do a survey 6 months after, how much they remember what they learned in onboarding, you'll be shocked how less effective was, as opposed to stretching that onboarding for a month and doing this do learn loop, right? And also it has to be continuous. As I said, training is a process, it's not an event. You got to get into the flow of their work. Just like your WhatsApp is interrupting you, your Facebook is interrupting all day long, and that's why you're giving attention to Facebook. You got to become the interrupter in a good way, right? If you are an agent of transformation, the interruptions are welcomed. The interruption through your teams, through Slack bots, through emails, through WhatsApp, whatever it takes, make it in their daily flow of work. And as I said, creativity, don't be boring. Yeah, otherwise none of this is going to work. You do a pilot, as we all, many of you know, this curve of adoption, right? So not everybody in your company is going to get excited about this, right? So find out which department is hurting the most. Is it the sales? Is it the marketing? Where that new initiative has the biggest point of failure, which CXO is worrying about day and night, and I guarantee you, you will get the budget, right? So let's say he's worried about his engineers not able to innovate the electrical vehicle, or not able to go online if you're a retail shop fast enough. Then that's the department which will be your early adopter. And as you start creating a new brand for yourself, a new way of delivery, new way of talking to CXO, slowly and slowly you get a mass adoption, and you go through. You don't start with the laggards, you don't start with the CXO who's not excited about training. You don't start with an old executive who is basically just there to keep the business running and not there to grow the business. Find an executive, find a sponsor, whether it's a head of sales, whether it's a GM from particular general manager particular branch, who is the early adopter of your concept, and get from there and start momentum, right? And you got to measure and improve. And this is our standard Kirkpatrick model based evaluation. You want to do that, and you want to go back to your CXO every 6 months or year and say how you were able to transform the people, right? So obviously, for any new thing, there is always the hype, right? So right now, let's say you're here, don't expect directly to go to here, right? From zero, let's say from 10 to 95, right? So from 10, even if you are able to get to 30% student engagement, 30% transformation, that's still 3x. 3x is a lot. That's 300%, right? Get there, and from 30% adoption, think about 35, 40, 50, 60, 70. So get there in a step-by-step way. Think micro step. Think like design thinking, right? Think about iterations. Think about innovation in that fashion, right? And for this, for world to change, for your company to change, you got to change yourself. So we have certain resources for you, some ebooks, some this recording will help. We can do some coaching. There's white papers on tap framework. A recording of this call could help. Feel free to email me at sach.chaudhary@parisosolutions.com. There's a Facebook group we have, LinkedIn group we have. Search there for the LMS space. That if you search on the Facebook, the LMS space, you'll find our group. And now let's see if there is any questions. Okay, let's see if there's a chat. Okay, I'm going to scroll through the chat questions. The questions about the session PPT being shared. We'll share a PDF of this. We'll also share the recording for those who needs. Okay. So there is a question about again, it going back to budget, right? Like how do we, while we're doing these changes in our organization with the new delivery model of micro training or continuous training, our current training and budget has been allocated. How do we do this change, right? So you want to look at which of your current training programs are working the best and which are performing the worst. And the best person to ask that is the employee or the attendee, but not the attendee right after the training session, but 3 months after the training session to see whether there was a transformation, whether there was information retention. And then you will be able to know which of these training session you need to cut and get them converted into a new, the TAP format, which consists of personalized, micro, action-based, continuous, supported by creativity, right? So that's how you're going to do. I got a question from Ashik. Which do you think is better, online or offline training in terms of outcome of the session, right? Obviously, offline is better. The issue becomes the logistics, right? So in the ideal world, if you can have an offline session, which you can divide into half an hour training session every week, that's going to be having tremendous impact. Because let's take example of manager training. Let's say you have a luxury to bring managers, or you can travel every different location, and whatever location there is, let's say Mumbai, you can go there as a trainer, get your 100 managers only for 30 minutes on Wednesday afternoon, right? And get one concept across and one small action item they can take throughout the week. Then go back there again next Wednesday for 30 minutes. And you'll be amazed how much better that session is compared to getting them to Lonavala for 8 hours and overdosing them with training, right? So that's the question. And of course, most of the companies won't be able to do this because of logistic problem. That's why you got to get on the hybrid or mostly online format, right? Let's say there's another question. Is the transformation all about digitization? No, this transformation can be anything, right? So I showed you the digital transformation slide, but this transformation could be about behavior changes you want in your manager. It could be about improving customer service reps, right? So give the personalized, micro, continuous, action-based training to your customer service reps. You want to see the productivity improve. We kind of get greedy, or even the CEOs get greedy, that let's shove all these 100 customer service reps into a room. Let's give them food and 8 hours of training and they will be transformed. And we all know that does not work. It just gives you impression that things are working. Essentially, if you go back to the foundation of the forgetting curve, most of it, 90% of it, is probably wasted. If you do a survey, not right after the course or one day after, do the survey 3 months, 9 months, 9 months after. See how many customer service reps transform. So you got to stop doing that, and you got to apply this TAP framework or whatever framework you come up with, your own thing, and figure out a way to make a learning as a continuous process. Let it be the, the way of living, as opposed to something you do once in a while. And this applies to the L&D folks as well. Okay, I think we are at the top of the hour. Let me see if I'm forgetting anything. So there is the email address. The website is paradisosolutions.com. We do have a free manager training nugget. And obviously, we have demos of our products. We have a white paper on tap, recording. So, all those things are available for you free of cost. Let's say there's another question. Let me see. The bigger difficulty is to continue the participation and pull from learners during the long duration programs. How do we manage this? That's where, again, the creativity part comes in, right? Your session has to be engaging not only with you, your content, with peer to peer as well, right? So that's one aspect of it, to pull the learners into you, right, into your program. Also creating that habit, right? So the way we did one of the customer service program is that every Wednesday 6 p.m. all the 500 reps across the India knew there's going to be a 45 minutes training on Zoom. And of course we split them into small groups, but they, after 2-3 weeks, they just got in the habit, because they knew their manager is not going to bother them throughout the week. They will have a undivided attention during that 30-45 minutes, right? And the content is going to be fun. So we had actors who had recorded some funny videos about customer service, these kind of things. If you don't do that kind of stuff, don't expect those customer service reps to talk about you. They're not going to change your brand. To be able to create your brand, you got to be something outstanding, right? That's how Ola become what Ola is. It delivers something outstanding. So if you want something, if you want to do the same thing you were doing for last 20 years and expect different results, that's insanity. So only way you're going to get your learners back is you got to pay the price. You got to use your creativity. You got to rehire your team, hire freshers, hire freshers who are really creative, then create amazing content. And content doesn't have to be just videos. It can be image. It can be a email you send right after the session, which invokes them, which invites them to action, right? So another thing, right? So we realize this customer service training at the end will say, this is what you need to perform action, like talk to one of your colleague and try being empathetic to their problems they're having, right? Just to practice empathy. And many of them will say that I forgot. So what we did in the nudge, the next day email we'll get, we'll give them 3 options, option A, B, C, that which of these days would you talk to your colleague? It's a simple thing. A, today, B, tomorrow, or whatnot. But what we're encouraging them to think about yesterday's session. So we're refreshing for that 1 30-second gap. We're also asking them to commit something, that I will do this tomorrow, right? So you got to have creative ideas like this, and you have to iterate. You're not going to get it right first time, right? But you will know what's working and what's not if you choose the right platform, which tells you whether people are doing things. Doing things based on what you learn is the biggest indicator whether transformation is happening. So if you have a platform which tells you that out of the 40 people who took the customization training yesterday night, about 50% of them replied to that email, and the next day 50% of them took the action, you know how effective your yesterday's session was. And then next time, how can you get this 50% to 60%? So it's an iterative process. Okay, that's all the time we have. It's been some good questions from Priyanka, Ashik, and there's a lot of people here who have put the questions which we haven't been able to answer. We'll try to get back, or you try to connect with us. But I thank you for your time. I know you're busy, and it was a lot, but hopefully you can take 1 or 2 concepts from this and really apply, right? It's again the learn, do, learn loop. Like just take one concept and do it. Yeah. And stop drowning the learners, please, for God's sake. Yeah. It's waste of money. Thank you, guys.